There is a social contract running underneath every neighborhood, every industry, every handshake at a party you were invited to. It has nothing to do with kindness or character or how hard you work. It runs entirely on one variable: what people think you are worth right now. At 0, you are background noise. At 1,000,000, you are a conversation starter. At 1,000,000,000, you are a guest of honor at the exact same party where nobody offered you a chair. The people did not change. The variable changed. And that distinction is one of the most expensive lessons money can teach. This episode tracks what happens to the social world around a person as net worth rises from nothing to a scale most people will never encounter. Not the cars or the houses, the invisible contract, the distance people keep, the chairs they pull out or push away. Because the social response to wealth is not random. It follows a system. And that system reveals more about how money actually works than almost any financial textbook will. The person at the center of this story starts with a second-hand truck, a borrowed reputation, and a trade that nobody respects. They end somewhere that could not have been predicted from the starting point, not because of luck or talent alone, because they understood something early that most people spend their entire lives missing. The work was never the point. Understanding who controls the definition of the work was. That single insight is the architecture behind. Every wealth journey begins at a level where the social contract is brutally simple. You are defined entirely by what you do with your hands. At this stage, income is transactional, and the people paying it treat it that way. No goodwill, no premium, no benefit of the doubt. The work is real, the disrespect is also real, and the two arrive together so consistently that most people mistake the disrespect for a fact about themselves rather than a fact about the transaction. Here is the financial reality at this floor. You are selling time and labor at the lowest markup in any market. No leverage, no asset, no compounding mechanism. The person doing the work keeps their head down and files every observation without reacting to it. That discipline is not weakness. It is the first capital they accumulate. They notice something that most people at this level never pause to see. The clients who treat them worst are often operating the thinnest margins. The confidence on display is borrowed. Contempt, it turns out, is not a reliable signal of financial health. It is sometimes a performance funded by credit. The person doing the work stores that observation. They do not spend it yet. They let it sit. They return to their own yard and their own numbers and keep moving. That is the posture that separates the ones who build from the ones who stay. Not anger, not acceptance. Precise. The first real asset a service business owns is not equipment. It is not a client list. It is not a contract. It is a reputation for doing the thing other people in the room would not do. At an income level around $20,000 to $30,000 a year, the margin for error is nearly zero. Every dollar is spoken for before it arrives. In that environment, a single act of honesty that costs you money in the short term and makes no logical sense to the people watching becomes the most powerful marketing instrument available. Word of mouth at this income level travels faster than any advertising because the community is dense and trust is scarce. One credible story about character spreads to 6 new clients in a month. The lesson is not sentimental, it is architectural. Reputation compounds. It earns interest the way capital earns interest. And at this stage of a business, it is the only compounding mechanism you have. There is a second mechanism at work here. The person doing the work is also learning the leverage problem. Time and labor have a hard ceiling. One person can only cover so many hours. The moment they hire someone else and step one level back from the physical work, they have crossed the most important threshold in small business. They are no longer selling their own time. They are beginning to build a system that earns while they manage rather than while they lift. That shift, from operator to architect, is not about money. It is about understanding which layer of the work actually scales. The person watching someone else push the mower they used to push does not feel relief. They feel a clean, quiet understanding. The machine was always the point. They were only At $100,000 in revenue, a pattern becomes visible that is almost invisible from below it. The most durable competitive advantages are built in spaces that people with more options refuse to enter. Not because those spaces are technically difficult, because they are socially uncomfortable, dirty, unglamorous, easy to look down on. Every industry has a version of this. The contracts that sit in the blind spot of credentialed competitors because the work is too physical, too unsexy, too far from what anyone wants to explain at a dinner party. The person building in that blind spot does not have a clever strategy. They have a realistic understanding of where the competition is not. And the contempt of others, the precise social mechanism that created the most pain at the starting level, becomes the moat. Nobody competes for what they are not willing to be seen doing. This is one of the clearest examples of how social psychology and financial architecture intersect. Status anxiety keeps talented, well-resourced competitors out of entire market segments indefinitely. The person building in those segments compounds quietly while everyone else fights for the same visible, prestigious, overcrowded space. There is a parallel lesson running at the same time. A small investment in presentation, a professional brand on the trucks, a legible name and number, does what years of relationship building failed to do in a single week. Signal matters. Not because the work changed, because the signal changed what category people placed the work in. The same service, repositioned, moved from a transaction people tolerated to a business. At $500,000, a new problem comes into focus that is harder to solve than any operational challenge. The social world does not respond to who you are. It responds to the signals you project about what category of person you belong to. A different company name on a truck, a tailored jacket in a meeting room, 3 words added to a business title. None of these change the underlying business. All of them change how the business is received. This is not cynical. It is how signaling actually works in every economy at every level. The person who figures this out early has an enormous structural advantage, but there is a cost. The moment you learn to read signals clearly, you also begin to see everyone else's costume. The neighbor who finally invites your spouse to lunch is not responding to your spouse. They are responding to a number. The warmth is genuine, but the trigger was not personal. That insight is useful, and it is also uncomfortable to carry. Once you can read a room that way, you cannot stop reading it. The person at this level begins to understand a paradox that will deepen at every stage above it. The more precisely you can decode the social contract, the harder it is to simply be inside one without analyzing it. The skill that generates the contracts also generates the distance. You close more deals. You feel less at home in any room. At this level, the business is also crossing a threshold. Municipal contracts, portfolio management, institutional clients. The revenue stops looking like a service business and starts. At $1 million, something changes in the social dynamic that is worth examining carefully because it is often misread as progress. The people who once measured social distance from you in physical feet now close that distance entirely. They wave you over. They ask questions about your business. They treat proximity to you as something worth having. But the mechanism has not changed. They are still pricing you. They stopped pricing your labor and started pricing your enterprise. The calculation is different. The calculus is the same. This is one of the clearest illustrations of what money actually buys and what it cannot buy at this level. It buys access. It does not buy genuine connection from people who were never connecting with you, only evaluating you. The distinction matters because people who mistake social warmth for authentic relationship at this stage make expensive decisions based on false signals. They bring in partners who are standing next to a number, not standing next to them. There is a sharper version of this pattern visible when someone from the old order, the person who once treated you as invisible, approaches you with a pitch. They still do not know your history. They only know your current number. The disciplined response is not emotional, it is analytical. You read the margins. You identify the structural problems. You pass or proceed based on the math. The moment revenge becomes a spreadsheet instead of a fantasy, you have crossed a significant financial maturity threshold. Not because you are cold, because you finally trust. At $10 million, a new social environment replaces the old one, and the inversion is total, but not in the way you expected. Nobody ignores you. Nobody creates distance. The social contract runs in the opposite direction now. People approach. They introduce themselves. They create reasons to be near you. On the surface, this looks like acceptance. It is not acceptance. It is a different form of the same pricing mechanism, running in reverse. Before, people moved away from a number they found too low. Now they move toward a number they find useful. The variable changed. The logic of the contract did not. The most precise description of this dynamic is one your family will name before you do. Being looked down on is a position you can climb out of. Being looked up to is a position that is just as transactional, but harder to escape because it feels better. At this level, a new acquisition closes. Your first major competitor, a company larger than your entire operation at its founding. The business has compounded past the point where any single neighborhood defines it, and yet the old neighborhood sends a message. Someone from that original social world, someone who once participated in its cruelest logic, is now broke and asking for a job. You hire them. You pay them fairly. You never mention the history. You understand that the silence is not generosity. The silence is the architecture of a consequence they will feel every single day without you ever having to design it. It should feel like something. It feels like. At $100 million, institutions begin to rewrite the history. A feature in a trade publication, a name on a building. And suddenly, people who spent years enforcing social distance discover that they always believed in you. The same organizations that filed formal complaints against you now draft formal invitations. The same neighbors who calibrated warmth to your quarterly revenue now describe your story as inspiring. This is not hypocrisy in the moral sense. It is the social contract operating exactly as it always did. The variable updated. The contract updated with it. The people are consistent. They are consistently responsive to the number, not to you. Understanding this protects you from two expensive mistakes. The first is trusting the new warmth as though it were different in kind from the old coldness. It is not. The second is dismissing it as meaningless. It has real utility if you read it correctly. Then something happens that crystallizes every prior level into a single clear image. The property that defined the starting point comes up for sale. The house where the humiliation was most public. You can buy it now, cash, over the phone. You are not buying a house. You are buying the physical site of a memory that has shaped every decision since. You stand on it as the owner. You feel the structure under your feet. You feel nothing else. Because the boards do not know who owns them, they cannot return the 30 years you spent getting here. The seed packet is still unopened. The house sits empty. You lock it and walk away without yet understanding. At $1 billion, capital reaches a scale where it can restructure physical environments, not just participate in them. You own the street. Not symbolically, the actual properties, acquired one by one through a company named after nothing, sold to you by people who never connected the buyer to the person they once looked through. But the moment you tell your spouse, expecting it to land as a gift, you understand a limit that $1 billion cannot cross. Owning the houses is not the same as belonging in them. The people who never saw you as a neighbor cannot be replaced by a deed. The wound was never about the property. It was about recognition. And you cannot purchase recognition retroactively from people who withheld it. This is a precision distinction in the psychology of wealth accumulation. Capital can restructure the external environment completely. It cannot rewrite relational history. The person who built the original humiliation into every subsequent business decision finally stands on the deck that was the central image of that history, and here's the apology they imagined for 30 years. It arrives exactly as promised. The person who caused the damage names every act in order, which confirms they always knew what they were doing. The apology is complete. It weighs nothing. Because the actual injury was not the act. The injury was the 30 years of carrying the act. And the apology arrives at the end of those 30 years, not the beginning. It cannot go back and lift the weight that has already been set down. You cannot get the night back. You can only own the boards it happened on. And you finally understand that at a scale that touches entire industries, the architecture of the original problem finally becomes solvable, but only because the approach changes entirely. You stop trying to fix the past. You build forward. The house that anchored the worst memory comes down, not in anger, in clarity. The site is cleared, and the thing the street once treated as shameful, the open lawn, the ordinary grass, becomes the center of something new. No gates, no pricing, no mechanism for evaluating who belongs. The people who move on to the rebuilt street are not there because of a number. They are there because of a relationship built through shared work, shared history, shared honesty. The first employee who needed the work worse than you did. The people who kept their heads down alongside you. The street that spent years enforcing social distance fills up with people who would hand a stranger a glass of water without running a calculation first. That is not a sentimental ending. It is a precise answer to the original question. You could not change the people. You changed which people were on the street. Your family walks across a lawn that nobody is scoring. No warmth calibrated to a number. No chair pulled out because the math worked, just a yard in the morning. And the packet that spent 30 years in the glove box, the $2 insult, the thing that said you were worth nothing beyond your labor, gets opened over the bare dirt where the old structure stood. The seed goes into the ground with your own hands, the same hands that started the whole machine. The social contract around wealth is not a character flaw in the people enforcing it. It is a system. It runs on signals, categories, and estimated numbers, and it updates when the inputs update. Understanding it as a system, rather than a moral judgment, is the thing that makes it navigable. The people who misread social warmth as genuine connection make bad partnership decisions. The people who assume all warmth is fake miss real relationships entirely. The skill is reading the difference, and that skill develops over time, not from a single insight. There is a version of wealth accumulation that is entirely oriented around gaining social approval from people who withheld it. That version is expensive, and the return on investment is poor. The approval arrives eventually, but it arrives as a product of the number, not a product of who you are. It tells you nothing true. The more durable orientation is this. Build the environment you want to belong to rather than earn entry into an environment that was never designed to include you. Capital, at sufficient scale, is an environmental tool. It can change the conditions, not just your position within them. The person who finishes this story does not feel vindicated by the people who changed their minds. They feel something quieter. They feel the weight of the work, which is the same weight it always was, but now it belongs entirely to them. No one is pricing it but them. The social contract will always run on the same variable. The work is to decide how much of your life you organize around that variable versus around something the variable cannot touch. That is not a financial question, but it is one of the most important decisions a person with growing capital will ever make, and it is usually not made once. It is made over and over, at every level,